Hi, this is Lane8492. This is the only true crime video I'll be doing this evening. I decided to do one at the last minute. I'm sure many of you are familiar that Florida put in a law that will put child rapists on death row. And many other states are planning to send repeat child rapists to death row as well. And here's the thing. I do support putting those who do this to children on death row, even if it didn't result in homicide. However, I'm going to be very realistic. Getting this implemented is going to be easier said than done. Why do I say that this is easier said than done? Because in 1977, the SCOTUS case of Coker versus Georgia struck down the death penalty as unconstitutional for non-homicidal rape. And the last time a person was executed for non-homicidal rape was back in 1964, which this video is on. The perpetrator's name was Ronald Lee Wolfe. You see, Ronald Lee Wolfe was born in 1930 in Clarendon up in the state of New York. You see, Ronald Lee Wolfe, who was in Missouri, was a known sex offender. And Ronald Lee Wolfe, who was a known sex offender, was wanted in New York for essaying an 8-year-old girl. And then he went to the state of Missouri, where he essayed a little girl there in that state in 1959. And then in 1960, he went on trial for essaying this little girl. And as a result, Ronald Lee Wolfe was sentenced to death and taken to death row at the old Missouri State Penitentiary in Jefferson City, Missouri. He spent about 4 years on death row before all of his appeals ran out. Back then, appeals didn't last very long for a death row inmate. But then in 1964, all of his appeals were exhausted. And as a result, on May 8th, 1964, Ronald Lee Wolfe died in the Missouri gas chamber at the old Missouri State Penitentiary in Jefferson City, Missouri. Of course, that institution closed in 2004. He was buried in an unmarked grave since there was no next of kin to claim his body. But this is the last person who was executed for non-homicidal rape in the United States. Like I said, his name was Ronald Lee Wolfe up in the state of Missouri. And he died in the gas chamber for his hideous crime. Like I said, I do support putting these sickos on death row, which is where they definitely belong. But as I said before, getting that implemented is going to be easier said than done with the SCOTUS case of Coker versus Georgia. This is Lane8492. I have an associate's, bachelor's, and master's degree in criminal justice. Hope you enjoy this video and let me know what you think. Thanks.